Now, if you want bad, you should see that fucking DeBarge movie I watched this week, which is now the biggest thing I've ever written in my life.
What is it?
I read about this TV One biopic of one of the lesser-known DeBarge brothers, Chris DeBarge, and it's awful. It's awful in just this remarkable way. I mean, like, just the entirety of the cast is just overwhelmed by their wigs, just trying to escape from their heads. And the production is just so incredibly low budget and embarrassing. I don't know. It's like a best friends level of ridiculously bad, but you don't know that whether or not they're aware of how bad it is.
Does it have the heart though that the best friends type movies?
There's a great deal of earnestness to it, which is really, like, it makes it that much more cringeworthy because everybody's acting their little heart out and being, just completely defeated by what's happening to them.
Welcome to the Everyone's a Critic movie review podcast. I'm your co-host, Bob Zarrell.
I get people off. I look for the one guy who isn't getting off, and I make him get off.
With me, as always, is professional film critic Sean Patrick.
I am the smart. I am the smart. S-M-R-T. I mean S-M-A-R-R-T.
And joining us this week, George LeCoin is back for Flick Chart later on in the episode.
We missed you, George.
Yeah, we don't want to listen to other people's opinions sometimes during Flick Chart.
Yeah.
Who needs a third person? No, I'm just kidding. We'll hopefully have someone back next week. I don't know who, but there's some fun movies coming out, so we'll get to that later. You can visit us at ihatecritics.net, everyone's a critic podcast.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Our handle is CriticsPod. Follow us and like us there. Share the podcast with your friends. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Alexa, Google Play. I don't know if I said that or not. Subscribe, rate, and review the show. We'll read your reviews on the air. If we haven't read a review and you wrote one, let us know and I'll go find it. I only really check Apple Podcasts. I've periodically look at other places, but I haven't seen anything in a while. So let us know on social media if we haven't read it yet.
Sometime I should probably just Google the show and just see if there's anything that someone has said about it.
Well, I do subscribe to something that compiles all the reviews.
Oh, yeah.
So
That's
that
nice.
does help. That's because if you go to, like, every country has their own Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, so they have their separate review systems. So it does compile all those together. But
should set up because my name is really common. Rather common, so when I put it in, when you put in my name, it always
Boondock
comes up.
Saints.
Yeah, every time. Sean Patrick Flannery, every single time. So I'm going to put up I think I'll set up a Google alert on your name just to see what comes up.
Uh-oh. I used to do that, but then I felt really stupid. What am I forgetting? Patreon. ihatecritics.net/Patreon is the best way to help support the podcast. You can also donate via PayPal at ihatecritics.net. And then if you want to buy some of our merch, it's the same website. If you click on the podcast merch tab, we're on TeePublic. It does help us grow the show. And then if you do buy something, take a picture of it, put it on social media. And like I said, tell your friends, let them know about the show, or we'd like to grow the show a little further. And let's move on to the trailers, and we'll start with Charlie's Angels.
Charlie's Angels, written and directed by Elizabeth Banks, who, of course, her last time out, she did Pitch Perfect, and that was really great. Her Pitch Perfect 2 is superior to the first Pitch Perfect in my mind. And she's got an interesting eye, and she's certainly a solid director. I think what we've seen in this trailer is pretty much the best that this concept can be, because it is such a limited, ridiculous concept. It's still such a concept that is stuck in its time, that it's hard to make this different. It's hard to make it feel relevant, I guess. They're doing what they can, with the very modern soundtrack and the that sort of modern kind of feminism to it, but at the same time, it's still kind of got the trappings of a typical Hollywood action movie.
Right, but at the same time, I mean, it's not trying to be anything beyond the Hollywood action movie, and maybe it can be its own thing compared to the other two. There's only two. There's a TV show and
the two movies that they made.
So, I mean, obviously they're all going to be somewhat the same thing, but a little bit different. And Elizabeth Banks does make watchable movies, and that's when you're making a Hollywood movie, that's all you really got to do. Mm-hmm. And I guess the most shocking thing to me is Kristen Stewart, since Twilight, has just kind of done indie stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm watching this, I'm like, she looks like a movie star in this thing. It's like, it's amazing that she just hasn't done movies like this at all, because she really does pull it off. I don't know.
Well, there was some type of thing where people were talking about not wanting to work with her for whatever reason. I don't know what that was about. It's all that Hollywood gossip nonsense, right. And there's those little things at the bottom of a review you read where you see ads for other things. Why Hollywood won't cast Kristen Stewart? That kind of nonsense. But she doesn't like doing this kind of thing. She really doesn't like a lot of attention in general, but then she says she doesn't want attention, and then people accuse her of saying that because she wants attention. So she can't win no matter what she does.
Right. I mean, it's weird. As much as I don't like Twilight, I kind of like Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart. I mean, a lot. I haven't seen a lot of the movies she's done since then, but I've seen my fair share because she's done a lot of indie movies.
Yeah.
And they've all been pretty decent, or at least okay at worst.
Daring at the very least.
Right.
Yeah, and him too. I mean, when you look, I didn't care for Good Time, but at least it's a bold move for him at the very least. And the Lost City of Z is like, I mean, he could not have picked a role further from anywhere, further from movie stardom, playing a very small supporting role to Charlie Hunnam in a movie barely anybody saw, but he's really great in it, and that's a really great movie.
And even the stuff he's done with Cronenberg, I don't know, at least it's different and artsy. Maybe a little too artsy, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I don't remember if I saw Cosmopolis or
not. Midway.
Oh, man.
Roland Emmerich takes on true stories.
Oh, God. And this worked so well when Michael Bay did it.
It's almost like a sequel to it, really.
It really is. Oh, this looks embarrassing. This looks like... it's going to have that mediocre professionalism that Roland Emmerich kind of champions. He's a supremely mediocre director, and that's what makes him so incredibly boring and bad. Is that he doesn't necessarily make a movie that is easy to mock. They are kind of easy to mock, but they're not in the way that like a really dedicated bad filmmaker does it, but like he can just give it a professionalism that is just elevate something bad to something that is annoyingly boring.
Right. And I mean, he did okay early on. I didn't like the movies per se, but at least, when you have Will Smith or something like that, you can make it watchable, and that says something, but
it so does. It just goes to show what a movie star really is when you can take something like you take Will Smith away from Independence Day, which you get to see in the second Independence Day movie, and it's just such a different thing. You take Will Smith away from Roland Emmerich and how incredibly dull and bad movies are, and then you put Will Smith in it, and it just turns into this whole other thing.
And I was telling Sean, it makes me feel bad for bad-mouthing Chris Nolan's movies, especially something like Dunkirk. But something like Dunkirk is at least it is intriguing enough that we can have a conversation about it and really dissect it from different angles and say why we didn't like it, and almost because it's good enough to not like. This one's just, we almost shouldn't even watch it on the show. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be a 5-minute review, or no one sees it but you, and you're going to be miserable for those 5 minutes, if we even go that long, because there's nothing interesting here. Like something like Dunkirk, at least, as much as I dislike Chris Nolan at times, at least there's something to talk about. Mm-hmm. He's
visually interesting. He's a compelling director. He's got compelling ideas, even as there's something stolid and kind of not dull, but just something that just doesn't grab you in terms of being deeply charismatic or interesting about his actors in the movie.
Right. So that's what this is missing, is Someone who's beyond mediocre.
Right? Because, I mean, look at that cast. Sorry,
I know.
Ed Skrein and Patrick Wilson and Nick Jonas, who I've been told by other people who looks kind of embarrassing in this. He's not very much in this trailer, but apparently in the other stuff that they market him in, he doesn't look that great. These are not the actors that leap off the screen, and they don't even use Woody Harrelson, the one guy who you would think would leap off the screen. Is not even in the trailer.
I don't remember seeing Aaron Eckhart. Mandy Moore, I think, is in pictures.
Yeah, I saw Aaron Eckhart was there. I think he's
pretty brief though, right?
Very obviously playing MacArthur in the movie, which is that everybody. My God, just MacArthur is just. It's one of the worst film characters because everybody plays him the exact same way with the exact same idiotic bravado, and you could just see it in the picture there. I'm pretty sure that's who he's playing because that just cuts that figure. Right.
And, again, not to badmouth those actors. They're just not – they're fine character actors, especially in the right hands, all of them. Mm-hmm. But – there's no movie star there. Even Woody Harrelson is probably the closest thing, but he's not a movie star either.
No, he stands out for other reasons because he's...
Cheers.
Yeah. He's kind of compelling figure away from the movies.
Right.
And I don't know. It does go to that is an interesting illustration of what a movie star is and what a character actor is you've got a bunch of character actors here who are fine, but if you put like Will Smith into something like this, he obviously couldn't be Midway, but he stands apart and he's so interesting and so charismatic. Your eye goes to him immediately, and it just demonstrates what a movie star does.
Well, even something like Armageddon, as much as you hate it, you still have movie stars in there that make it watchable for a certain audience. I don't think, you might get that old person crowd that goes and sees this, but it doesn't even look good. So I
can't even imagine what anybody thinks people in a modern context are going to want to see about Midway.
Right.
What is it? What makes it compelling in this day and age to retell this story? Everybody wants to retell these stories, but you have to have a reason why. Spike Lee is making a Vietnam movie right now. And I want to see that because it's Spike Lee, and he's got Chadwick Boseman starring in it. And I mean, that's a compelling idea just from the two of them, as opposed to Midway. What does Midway say about today in any way? How does it speak to any modern context?
Knowing it's Roland Emmerich, there's explosions and there's a reason to make movies.
So they're just going to make this embarrassing Hollywood action movie out of something that actually happened, which was what Bay did with Pearl Harbor, and it's just going to suck again.
We're not going to talk about that movie this long when it actually comes out. The Good Liar.
The Good Liar. There's aspects of this I like, and there's aspects of this I don't like. There's this one point in the movie where, or the one in the trailer where something about living secret lives, but then it turns into secret lies. That is so lame. But I do like the idea though of when you think about killers or these these kind of alpha male kind of criminals, what would happen if one of them actually did live into old age? Not saying that's who Ian McKellen is playing here, but there's kind of an aspect of him playing a murderer or a guy who's had a past where he's been kind of deceptive, and those people don't tend to live very long. They tend to live fast and die young. The idea of one of them living to an age where he still wants to be the young criminal that he was and still seek that rush of criminality at an old age, that's kind of an interesting idea.
Yeah, there's part of me that, and maybe I'm bringing this out of the trailer, but obviously they're setting him up to be the good liar. But I have a feeling the twist is she's been lying the whole time. Helen Mirren, she's the one who plays the one being lied to in the trailer, at least. Huh. But I'm just sitting there going, there's going to be some twist at the end here, and she's going to be the mastermind or something like that.
It's going to be this elaborate thing where he's playing an escaped German Nazi, and she's been a Nazi hunter the whole time.
The Peanut Butter Falcon.
Interesting. Very different kind of trailer. Haven't seen Shia LaBeouf in a little while, playing a very unique and very singular character here. This sort of redneck backwoods guy who takes under his wing this mentally challenged young man who escapes from some sort of hospital setting. Dakota Fanning is related to him. Johnson, sorry.
I almost typed in Fanning when I was doing the show notes, too.
She plays someone who's sort of related to him in some way, and she's got to go find them, and she'll end up going on this journey with them. The mentally challenged young man wants to get to this wrestling school somewhere. I believe it's Florida is the setting. And there's a whole wrestling aspect of it that I found interesting, but mostly I found compelling Shia LaBeouf, who, this has been the theme here, is talking about movie stars. He feels like a movie star. Like,
oh, yeah.
He stands out in a very unique way, and it's partly, of course, because of the public persona that he's cut for himself, but also he is a deeply compelling actor when the movie focuses on him. Like American Honey, he stands apart, or like even in the Transformers movies, which are terrible, he does have this very unique energy to him that is apart from that character and apart from that awful movie. He's trying very hard.
Similar to Armageddon, he is a movie star in that, that makes that movie, that gives it an audience that allows it to be sequels. It's beyond just the robots.
And he's very talented here. He comes off as really charismatic and interesting, and he makes me want to see this movie.
Yeah, when I was looking for trailers, I saw the little screenshot or the whatever they call it, the small little thing on YouTube, and I almost didn't click on it because of him, just because he annoys me so much. But I did, and if it wasn't good, I wasn't going to post it because I didn't really care. But I was surprised. It was really. It kind of looks like. I was going to say Green Book for like people with Down syndrome, but it's a little more than, or a little different than that. I want to call it more than that, but different than that. But I don't know. It does look. It looks watchable. It looks like a movie you can't dislike, similar to Green Book, where if nothing else, it's just a heartwarming, road movie. And so for that alone, I'm interested.
What makes it really interesting is the way that in this trailer alone, they make it. They give you an idea of why his character would do what he's doing. He's this loner character in the backwoods, walking around, hiking everywhere, carrying a gun, no home, just kind of roaming the countryside. Why would this guy take this mentally challenged young man under his wing? And the trailer actually kind of gives you an idea why he would do that. Like, this kid is kind of weirdly compelling, and you could sense why he would do that. And I like that. I like that aspect of it.
I will say at the beginning of the trailer, there's a voiceover kind of thing. And not really a voiceover, it's somebody talking. And I thought that was Shia LaBeouf's the accent he was going to do. I'm like, oh my God, he's making a really bad choice right now. And then luckily a man pops up and he's the one talking.
I had that same thought. I was like, oh boy, this is not going to go well.
Because it sounded like a voice he could do.
Yeah.
All right, let's start the show.
All right.
It's an interesting week because we have two things that you tend to have a bias against: ghost movies and Danny Boyle.
I've liked a lot of Danny Boyle.
Yeah, but you've also not liked movies that a lot of people have liked his too, though. So I needed something funny to say.
I hate Slumdog Millionaire. I do. I hate it.
You're not a big Train Spotting fan.
I'm not a Train Spotting fan either. Yeah.
Annabelle Comes Home. Let's just avoid Danny Boyle for a while.
Annabelle Comes Home is the latest movie in the Conjuring universe and the third Annabelle film that they've made. This time we're picking up the story, I think, at the end of the first Annabelle movie, where the Warrens obtained the Annabelle doll and took it back to their home and put it into their Museum of Evil, I guess, whatever it is. They're going to lock it up and use some religious voodoo to keep it under wraps, to keep demons from getting into it and her from getting out. Ed and Lorraine Warren are once again played by Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, but they're not the leads of the story. They turned that over to a character who is their daughter, as well as her daughter's babysitter and the daughter's best friend. or the babysitter's best friend, and they're going to be the leads here. And what I can't get over is how just remarkably irresponsible it would be if this were a true story. I mean, can you imagine? Here you have Ed and Lorraine Warren who have this museum. Let's just buy the premise, okay? Let's just buy the idea. There's evil in the world. Ed and Lorraine Warren are the ones who are battling that evil. They know it exists. It's a real thing. And they've got much of it, the history of this evil, locked up in their own home. What would be the most irresponsible thing they could do? Allow strangers to stay in their home while they're not there. That is pretty much the most irresponsible thing they can do. And leave the keys to their Museum of Evil sitting in the open for people to take hold of. Which is what they do in this movie.
There's something wrong. I mean, I was going to actually ask you to buy the premise and say thank you for taking care of that for me already. But now that we've bought the premise, now we have to buy the evil can be trapped in a room?
Well, yeah,
and ghosts as well.
I'm willing to go there because I think what they've done throughout some of the adventures of the Warrens is they've and again, just buying into the premise because I don't believe in ghosts and all that nonsense. But buying into the premise as if this were a movie universe and not based on real people. Ed and Lorraine Warren were real con artists. They exist in the real world. But in the movie, let's just treat them as movie characters in a movie universe. They've built up religion and belief and God as a force that opposes evil. And what they do is they bring in a priest, and they've got the backing of the Vatican on their side, and they pray a lot. And I'm willing to buy into the idea that you could, I wish they were more daring in treating God as a figure who can battle evil. Evil gets all of the main billing in these movies, and I wish God was more of an equal, honestly. And I don't think God really gets the kind of equal treatment often enough, because the evil seems to not win. The evil keeps getting defeated or held back, but God just seems like he kind of gets his ass kicked for most of these movies. But I'm willing to buy in that they're able to, use incantations of God and the evocation of the Bible to hold this back. So I'm willing to buy into that. But the way that they do it in this movie is just so stupid. Like, you've got the most evil thing in the world. You're trying to tell the outside world that you don't have it. They're trying to pretend that they're not battling evil. And so that means that it gets out a little bit. There's a newspaper article that reveals who they are, and so people kind of get curious. This friend, Daniela, of the babysitter, shows up because she wants to get into their room of evil and take a look around because she thinks they're creeps and weirdos. So she's kind of a tourist in this world. She wants to tour it, and she's going to get in. She's the one who releases the evil. And like I said, it's horribly irresponsible to have the Museum of Evil in this universe and allow people to just wander around your house.
See, there's better titles, too. Museum of Evil is a better title than Annabelle Comes Home. The Adventures of the Warrens is a good title. What I fear, yet I'll probably see it, is because at some point they're leading up to The Conjuring and Amityville, because it's within the same world. Right. I mean, the Warrens obviously were the ones that investigated the quote-unquote real-life story there.
Invented these stories, yes.
They didn't invent them. The people that lived there invented it. But they went along with it.
Capitalized upon the con artist.
But at some point, that those, like the Marvel Universe, that has to, like Conjuring, whatever. Are we on 3 now? Has that come out?
I'm not sure.
I don't know. At some point, that's going to happen, though. It has to.
I would imagine. I'm in the Conjuring verse.
Yeah. I don't know. My house literally sat on the market for like a year for 2 reasons. One, we live in Illinois on the Iowa border, and Iowa's a lot cheaper to live in. But 2, people really think my house is haunted. The entire town of Sherrard keeps referring to people I don't know. Oh, you live in the haunted house. I've been here for over a year now. And I understand why people think things are haunted, but houses make noise. They're pieces of wood built on top of each other. They've been there for, in this case, 40 years, in other cases longer. But acoustics can be weird. Wiring can go bad. In our case, we just have weird acoustic. The acoustics are weird in it, but people really, really, truly believe that our house is haunted, and it's I don't know. It's weird. I'd love to see the version of these movies from somebody who doesn't believe in ghosts with the same things happening and showing how it wasn't really ghosts.
Yeah, that would be awesome, but they never do that. They never make that movie.
Well, of course, too, the way they... I mean, in real life, let's just say in real life, ghosts are real. Yeah. No one's dying from them. They're just scaring you. So... I don't know if anybody dies in these Annabelle movies. I haven't seen any of them. But.
This movie does what these movie does. So you've got the girl releases Annabelle from her case, which is made of religious glass. And they open it. She opens it up, and that unleashes Annabelle, and she goes around the house. Annabelle herself doesn't move. Like what Annabelle is I guess a conduit for demons of some sort. And I don't know. The powers of Annabelle are so nebulous and so poorly established that you can't really understand what she does and how she does it. She goes places, but you don't see her move. She just, but she doesn't have a personality or a specter inside. I don't know. It's nonsense. But, you've got Annabelle and you've got the idea, fine. But then they go and do that thing that I hate in these movies. There's a glass on a table and it falls off. Why? Why did the ghost drop the glass? Why does the ghost turn on the record player? Why does the ghost slam the door? Why are they doing what they're doing? Give me a purpose. Give me a reason. I don't understand it. Now, the character of Daniela is interesting because she does have a point and purpose. They'll reveal throughout the story that she has a reason. She's not just curious about the Warrens. She's got a past that is affecting her, that is driving her to do what she does. She thinks the Warrens can help her achieve something that she wants. And I appreciated her and her performance. She's the most interesting character. She's not just there to create a situation where this evil goes unleashed. She's got a point and purpose to do what she does. But beyond her, though, then you've just got the rest of the movie where it's just like people reacting to crazy things in the dumbest way possible. You've got a character, the babysitting character at one point is in a situation where she's in the dark, the lights have gone out, and she's got a flashlight, and someone is rolling coins towards her. And she doesn't understand where the coin's from. We know where they're from because it's something called, this character is getting his own movie called The Ferryman. So we understand what's going on there. But she doesn't. But if you were in a dark house and someone kept rolling coins at you from out of nowhere, you're going to... first your thought is, what fucking asshole is rolling coins at me in the dark, and why are they doing it? But she's just like, every time she's got to walk up and pick up the coin and stare at it, and then another one comes, she's got to pick it up and stare at it, and I'm just my head is just in the back of the seat, just kind of, oh my God, here comes the music, and then, here comes the reveal, and the jump scare, and here's another jump scare, and oh my God, it's tedious. It's tedious.
And I don't understand how, I mean... You can say, yeah, we watch a lot of movies and we're just bored by it, but the audience for this, all these movies are the same, so it's not like the audience hasn't seen this a bunch of times too. So I don't know if they're just investing themselves. They must be just investing themselves so deep into the story that.
I think it's that idea of that communal feeling of fear. Like you want to see your friends, you want to see your friend jump. You want to feel the same kind of tension. So you go into these movies as a group of friends, looking to have this experience. And when you're going to look for an experience, you may have that experience just because you want to. And I think that's the communal feeling of that is what appeals about this from a psychological perspective. But it doesn't make these movies good.
And just, I'm sure you fall for jump scares here and there, as do I. I mean, it's inevitable. It's usually a loud bang, and you can't help yourself. Yeah. But it's not. It's just more of an eye-rolling jump scare than a real thing. All right, long enough on Annabelle. I figured this would be more like a Midway review. Yesterday.
Yesterday, directed by Danny Boyle and written by Richard Curtis, who wrote Four Weddings and a Funeral and Love Actually. What a team. I mean, just what an incredible team. Danny Boyle is a director who's pretty hit and miss, but when he hits, he makes masterpieces. He makes some of the most incredible movies ever. 127 Hours, Millions. His Steve Jobs movie is amazing. Still my favorite movie of that year. It came out, and this is another incredible movie. And even the misses, the critics and a lot of audiences still like Slumdog Millionaire, which I hate, won an Oscar, won Best Picture. So I mean, I still hate it, but it won Best Picture. This is one of the good category though. This is in the masterwork category, and it's a genre movie. It's a romance and a musical, but at the same time, so it's kind of what do I want to say? It's more of a mainstream kind of happy movie, and so it doesn't have a lot of depth in that meaningful way. But for a genre movie, for a comedy, for a romance, it's among the best I've seen in a long time. It's the kind of movie that Hollywood doesn't seem able to make anymore. And this type of romance that has a natural charismatic humor and a genuine romance to it. So Hamish Patel plays a character named Jack, who spent the last 10 years trying to make his music career happen. Lily James is his best friend and manager, who's been trying to push him to keep at it. He's about to give up when one night he's returning home from a gig and he gets into an accident, just as power goes out around the world for 12 seconds. He wakes up in the hospital the next morning, and Lily James is there. And he makes a kind of a humorous reference to a Beatles song, and she just kind of looks at him funny, like, I don't know what you're talking about. And that throws him for a little bit. He gets out of the hospital, and she gives him a guitar, and he's there with his other friends, and he decides he's going to test out the guitar by playing Yesterday. And his friends all react as if they've never heard the song before. And he thinks that they're playing some kind of bizarre prank on him. He goes home and he goes to Google and he starts Googling the Beatles, and suddenly he realizes the Beatles don't exist anymore. They've been wiped from history, and he is the only person who remembers them and their music. And as conflicted as he is about the idea, he decides to start performing their songs from memory. And there's a very funny sequence of him just trying to desperately recall the lyrics in the same way any other person would just try and recall lyrics from their favorite songs. Even if you love a song, you may not remember every single lyric, and that's really kind of a fun process of watching him trying to remember. There's especially a lot of time spent on Eleanor Rigby, and him trying to recall where and what part of the song All the Lonely People is, and it's a really great sequence. But he slowly but surely becomes this big, massive rock star, thanks to Ed Sheeran, who sees him perform on a little TV show and decides to make him his opening act. And there's a really great sequence where he and Ed Sheeran get into a songwriting contest, and he decides he's going to sit down and write The Long and Winding Road. Which is so good. It's such a fun sequence. Hamish Patel's a really, really good actor and a really compelling presence, and I really enjoyed him and his humor. And I loved the conflict that he's playing between wanting to be a big rock star and have all this success, at the same time feeling bad that he's taking advantage of somebody else's work. There's this really great arc, too, about these other characters who may also remember who the Beatles are, and I love the payoff. The payoff of that is just beautiful. But the heart of the movie, as much as it spends a lot of time on the Beatles and the music, and the heart of the film is actually him and Lily James and their relationship, their friendship, and his kind of misunderstanding of their friendship. And I really love her. She is just such a brilliant actress. The way she plays it, and the way she makes it feel so specific to these two characters. Because I know there's a lot of... You could probably look at this and go, this is kind of a male fantasy of a guy who has this girl who just worships everything that he does and supports him, and he doesn't realize how much that she likes him, and he's just kind of off, in his own headspace. But she really makes that feel real. And he comes around on her in that way that is very surprising to him. And I loved the way that they played that. But I loved everything about this movie. I think it's warm and funny and romantic and sweet and visually fantastic, because you've got Richard Curtis ideas and Danny Boyle visuals, and the two just work really well together in a way you would not expect. And then you've got some of the greatest songs of all time mixed in, and it just gets that much better. I really love this movie.
Were there any jokes about some of the more childish Beatles songs that he avoided playing? Like, maybe not Yellow Submarine or something like that?
Not really. There's not really. I mean, there's not much talk about that because I think some of it he avoids just because he can't remember the more psychedelic lyrics.
Right.
In some of them, but he does perform some of those as well. Like Eleanor Rigby is in there, and as odd as Eleanor Rigby is, there's a couple other of the odd songs in there that he does that you wouldn't expect.
Does he do A Day in the Life?
I'm struggling to remember. He might actually.
Wow.
It might be in there. What he does demonstrate though is that so many of the Beatles songs still hold up today. Like you can get up and rock those Beatles songs, and "Help" especially has a big spot in this, and it really really works, and it really works in a modern context. He speeds it up a little bit and plays it with kind of not heavy metal, but like just like a really hard edge to it, and it really works and it's contextually really interesting as well.
Have you ever heard of the band Beatlesafter?
No.
It's this cover band that combines Beatles and Metallica songs, and the people who own the Beatles catalog actually sued them to make them stop. And believe it or not, Metallica came to their defense and paid their legal fees to let them keep going. It's actually pretty, instead of like the Tax Man, it's the Sandman, and it's actually pretty fascinating. Is there album cover stuff? They do anything with that?
There's a funny bit, with Lamorne Morris plays the head of their head of the record company, and he so Jack wants to use kind of classic Beatles covers, and and Lamorne Morris just kind of shoots them all down, like that's a stupid idea, and that's a dumb idea, that's not going to work.
Was there a joke where it's like, you can't cross Abbey Road, that's a busy street? Because I've heard that's one of the funniest things to do is sit and kind of go to there and look at that crosswalk, and people try to take pictures and nearly get hit by cars because it really is a busy road. Is that the only band that doesn't exist? Like after playing Yesterday, does he like start to play Stairway to Heaven, and do they notice it?
He goes looking, and the Rolling Stones are there. So there are other things that are missing, like Coca-Cola doesn't exist in this universe, only Pepsi. And there's one more in there at the end that was pretty funny. A famous character in fiction also doesn't exist. That pays off with a little funny joke at the end.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I really wanted to see it. It's just one of those, I got a kid in a tournament this weekend, and it sucks.
Yeah.
Bad timing.
This is an absolute must-see, though. I mean, it is one of the best movies of the year. It's romantic, it's sweet, it's smart, and it's funny. And it's only at 60% on Rotten Tomatoes. I don't understand how people are looking at this movie and being so negative. Because I think it's wonderful. And
is it just that it's too straightforward?
Maybe.
For Danny Boyle, you got that, I don't know, the bias, or not the bias, but
maybe just people maybe expecting a little bit more from him, something, deeper and more, epic, maybe, I don't know.
It's a shame.
I think there's a lot of people who also don't like the style of Richard Curtis, too. And, there's a lot of people who really hate Love Actually.
Critics?
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to our Undisputed Classic.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event for the linear, legitimate, and universally recognized Undisputed Classic.
Yellow Submarine.
Had you seen this before?
No.
Me either. What an interesting and fascinating movie. The Yellow Submarine, 1968, an animated movie that the Beatles didn't want to make. They actually didn't want to make a movie at all. They were contracted with United Artists to make 3 movies. They made, obviously, the first film was a huge success, Hard Day's Night, and then they had an experience making Help that they absolutely hated. They just did not care for that at all, and they didn't want to make movies anymore. So as a compromise to finish out their contract with United Artists, they agreed to this animated movie that they wouldn't actually have to be in, other than one scene, and then they could just contribute songs to it and be done. And what happens then from that, with them not wanting to be involved, they turned it over to this very unique creative team who took the Beatles music and kind of extrapolated out of it this very psychedelic kids movie. And what they had in mind is a kids movie,
right?
That has all this poetic dialogue filled with bizarre puns and this visual style that is pretty much unlike anything that had been seen at the time. And what you get is this weird, progressive 60s, deeply influential work of art that you've now seen, that I didn't even realize that I'd seen dozens of times over the years. This is what influenced Terry Gilliam in his animations on Monty Python, and you can see the influence of this movie in Aardman and Pixar and all the Simpsons. Pro wrestling. What?
Blue Meanie.
Oh yeah, I almost forgot about that. That's actually the only concept I never understood the concept of the Blue Meanie at all in pro wrestling. There is a wrestling character named Blue Meanie who was in the WWE and ECW, and I really didn't understand why he called himself that for years.
Now you know. I didn't either.
The Blue Meanies are the evil characters in this movie who are attacking Pepperland, this underwater universe that is accessible via a yellow submarine that goes into some approximation of real-world London and picks up the Beatles and takes them back to battle the Blue Meanies using love.
Yeah.
How much do you hate this?
I don't hate it. It was... like you called it a kids movie, but as I'm watching, I'm like, who is this really for?
Right.
I mean, I guess if you were on acid or something like that, and part of me wishes I was, because I mean, it's like 4 minutes, 5 minutes of boredom, and then an awesome song, and then 5 minutes of boredom, and an awesome song, and then 5 minutes of boredom, and an awesome song, and then I remember in college, like they re-released the soundtrack, or maybe they'd never released it before. I don't know, because that "Hey Bulldog" song,
right,
or whatever, had never been released, and it was like a big deal that you could get it, and I think that's a fantastic song. I liked all of that, and I was able to follow it and watch it. It was just kind of like, it's not... I mean, I guess in the Terry Gilliam sense, there's usually... I guess sometimes he messes with it, too. But with Monty Python, there's other things going on. With some, there's just something... I just don't know who this movie's for, aside from people on drugs. And maybe it's just due to what's come after it, what it's influenced. But other than the music, it was just kind of, I don't know, just a thing. I call it a piece of art, and it's not bad. It was hard for me to find out who this movie was for. And maybe in 1968 it made more sense. I don't know. But but again, I mean, similar to like your review of Bohemian Rhapsody, I could just put the records on. So I don't know. I mean, part of me wants to. I've never really gotten high, but maybe get high and see what it's like to watch this movie. It might be fun.
It's definitely a visual trip. And very unique, and not the Beatles talking. By the way, that is actors doing the voices of the Beatles. It was funny. The Universal was punishing any critic back in the day that would reveal that this was not, in fact, the Beatles, or United Artists. They would say, like, you're not going to get to watch any of our movies if you tell people that's not the Beatles.
It makes me wonder, though, is, similar when we watched Dracula, and I don't remember the actor's name, but they took his Dracula, and that became the voice of Dracula going forward. Is this kind of the people who start impersonating the Beatles? Does it come from this movie?
I think it does. I think there's an aspect of that. Yeah, obviously A Hard Day's Night does provide a little bit of a template as well, but yeah, I think there's an aspect of it. After 68, people do kind of envision the Beatles in this fashion.
Because it's those tones for all four of the guys. You can always tell the difference, and whenever you hear someone doing an impression, it really does sound like they're pulling from this movie when they do that.
I was listening to an interview with one of the voice artists on this movie, and he actually did the voice for both Paul and George.
Right.
Because the way he described it is fascinating. He described it as a symphony. As how they were coming up with the voices, not so much based on the Beatles themselves, a little bit, but and mostly from the Beatles animated TV series where they got a lot of the idea. But the way that they actually did it was to try and set them apart. Was they set them at different tones in sort of how you hear them. So one's up high, then you got a deep bass, and then you've got two mid voices that sound just a little bit somewhere in the middle of that high Ringo and the low John.
Right. And
that's a really interesting way to do it, and it adds into that musicality that runs throughout the entire movie.
Yeah.
I will give you this. I did nod off during the non-musical segments a couple of times. So
it took me 2 viewings to get through it. But I'm glad I saw it. It's not, my kids would have been miserable. So it definitely isn't for kids in 2019. And it's not for, I don't think Josh would have liked it at all, because he doesn't even like the music.
The music is incredible, though.
Oh, yeah, if you like...
this just sounds beautiful. Every, like, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds is so beautiful when you're listening to it, and like your surround sound, and with that, that style of animation as the music video, and you could take each of those segments out and turn them into music videos. Yeah.
I'd suppose maybe the only song I don't really like is Yellow Submarine. I'm not a big fan of that song, although I like the end of it. But if nothing else, it was fun to listen to the Beatles for a weekend.
Yeah.
Anything else before we move on?
I definitely do recommend people see it. I think it's no Hard Day's Night is kind of a masterpiece, and that's kind of the ultimate idea of the Beatles on the big screen. Aside from dreams of their Lord of the Rings version, but other than that, this would be what to look for.
Is Help bad, or they just hate it?
I don't know. I've never seen it. I'm betting it's not great, considering how much they hate it.
All right, let's move on.
Since this is Aunt Bethany's 80th Christmas, I think she should lead us in the saying of grace.
What, dear? Grace! Grace! She passed away 30 years ago.
Great Balls of Fire.
This is Dennis Quaid, right?
Yeah.
And the story of...
writer. Jerry Lee Lewis.
Oh, God, yeah. Wow, what a problematic idea this is. Because she was, 15?
Right.
And he was 30?
Yep.
Hey, and let's make a romance movie out of that.
This is before it wasn't okay.
I've not seen this movie in 30 years.
And you can't get to it.
No.
So you had to get it on disc, I believe.
Wow.
Probably because it doesn't hold up.
It probably doesn't.
A wide variety of reasons.
Yeah.
Far From Home, Drew Barrymore.
Never heard of it.
Really?
Yeah.
Neither have I, although there was a phase where after she was on Letterman, while I started trying to find Drew Barrymore movies that weren't E.T. The Karate Kid 3.
Karate Kid 3 takes the story of Daniel LaRusso and Mr. Miyagi to Mr. Miyagi's home country. And he's going to spend the summer there, I guess, and kind of work on his karate where it was invented.
I think that's part 2.
Oh, is it?
I think 3 is when he fights... he goes back to Cobra Kai again. It's almost like recreating...
I don't remember any Karate Kid 3 then at all.
Yeah.
I have no memory of this movie in any way. Okay.
Yeah, they bring back... It's back against Cobra Kai again, except for it's just one guy this time. I think it's Barnes, I want to say. Is Barnes in the first one, or is that... Hold on, let's see what I
have no memory of Karate Kid 3 at all then. I thought it was Karate Kid 2, honestly.
Yeah, they bring the Cobra Kai back for another fight, and Miyagi won't train him this time. And
oh, yeah?
So he starts doing it on his own, and then finally Miyagi comes and saves the day and teaches him a different type. There's no crane kick, unfortunately, but they... Mike Barnes, Sean Kanan, I don't know, it's a... Let's see here. John Kreese, his life is in tatters after his karate school is defeated by Daniel and Miyagi. Visits Terry Silver, a Vietnam War comrade. That's right. Terry is a ruthless businessman and martial arts expert. He vows to help Kreese gain revenge on Daniel and Miyagi and reestablish Cobra Kai. Upon returning from Okinawa, Daniel and Miyagi discover that their apartment building has been demolished, which brings Miyagi out of work. Going against Miyagi's wishes, Daniel uses his college funds to realize Miyagi's dream of opening a bonsai tree shop and becomes a partner in the bonsai business. But then, obviously, they push Daniel to the point where Daniel and Barnes have a fight at the end, and, of course, Daniel wins.
This is so weird. I don't remember this movie in any way.
This was my favorite of the three.
Really?
As a kid. I watched it the most, and John Avildsen directed it. I mean, obviously, everything he's... Without Stallone writing his shit, it's just kind of Rocky Light. But
I've blocked this movie from my memory entirely.
Yeah, the guy who played Mike Barnes ended up being a soap opera star.
Really?
Yeah.
I just can't believe I don't remember this movie at all.
I enjoyed it. A movie we do remember is Do the Right Thing.
Do the Right Thing. Yes, Spike Lee's movie from 1989 that should have won Best Picture. Wasn't even nominated.
Kim Basinger it said something at the awards, I guess.
Yeah.
She read off the nominations and then went in business for herself and said Do the Right Thing should have been nominated.
I should have won, is really what should have happened. But Do the Right Thing is the story of a single day in the Bedford-Stuyvesant neighborhood of New York, centered on a series of various different characters on the hottest day of the year and building tensions throughout in this neighborhood. Danny Aiello and his two sons run a pizza shop there. Spike Lee as Mookie works there as their delivery guy, and the tensions are going to build throughout the day with this character played by Giancarlo Esposito, bugging out, who points out that there are only Italian guys on their wall, and they live in and they're operating a pizza shop in a black neighborhood with no black guys on the wall, and he's going to turn this into his own form of protest, and that's. Again, that's a loose idea of what a plot. That's an idea what a plot might be, but that's not really the focus of the movie. The focus on the movie is just sort of little illustrations of this neighborhood and just little illustrations of the people who live there and poetic breakdowns here and there, just of daily life and observances of the world around them. And it is fascinating and different and incredibly unique and singular, and that's what I find so wonderful about this movie is just how the looseness of it, and yet how all those loose threads connect in ways you don't expect, and that's what the movie just plays out that way, building up all of this tension that you don't even realize is there until the very end, and it's so real in the way that kind of builds up that way because. Oftentimes you'll arrive at a situation where it doesn't feel tense, and then suddenly out of nowhere it is, and then that tension boils over into something you could never really imagine before. I love this movie. I love every aspect of this movie. I love the strangeness of it, the staginess of it, the play aspect of it. It feels oftentimes stage-bound, even as it is on an actual street. It begins with this stage set and Rosie Perez doing this very violent, angry dance to Fight the Power by Public Enemy, which is a recurring motif throughout the movie. That song keeps coming back and coming back and coming back. You think you can peg what this movie is, like this is a movie about anger and it's a movie about violence, but it's not. There's so much more to it. It's just it's this encapsulation of American life on this one spot, and I really love that.
Yeah, it's about a bunch. I mean, it is about anger and violence, but it's about more than that. It's about all these different things. I mean, even global warming peeks its head in.
Yeah, 30 years ago.
And even the Spike Lee style, I haven't, it's stagey, I guess, but he had it was a very unique way of doing things. He even started doing Nike commercials, kind of in the similar style with Jordan. And I in a way, I miss those movies. It's been forever since, because he did a couple like in a similar style, back originally. But this one just stands out. And I heard him on doing an interview recently where he kind of compared '89 to last year, where Black Klansman was such a phenomenal movie, but Green Book wins.
Right.
And 30 years from now, what are we going to be watching? And he's right. Green Book's a very fine movie. It's very watchable, and you can't dislike it. But, we'll be talking about Black Klansman then. Mm-hmm. And this is, I'd seen bits and pieces of it. I knew the story, so I knew what happened. But it's just a remarkable movie where there's no good guy, there's no bad guy, except maybe the cops, definitely the cops. But it's just kind of everybody existing and watching them go through their biases there, and it's fair to all of them. I don't know. It's almost like Spike Lee's kind of become a different person, because when I heard him talk about this movie, he seemed to have more of a singular idea of what it is now, and I was kind of surprised by that. But the movie itself, I don't know. It's a really, really good, really, really important movie that I think everybody should see.
It still feels vital and relevant and alive in ways that movies from 1989, many other movies from 1989 don't.
Right.
This is such a visionary movie. And I keep going back to, Last Crusade and just how myopic and up its own ass it is. And this is the kind of movie that kind of demonstrates that aspect of that movie, is that movie is so far up its own ass, whereas this movie is all, just focused so wide and so broad and so appealing.
Well, it's not fair to compare Last Crusade to Do the Right Thing.
They came out the same year. That's the only. That's why.
Ins and ends there. Yeah.
But no, they're the opposite of each other, though. Is
right.
What I'm saying is
Definitely.
that film is myopic and up its own ass, and this movie is broad and visionary and a truly great film.
Yeah, and it's. Literally the only thing that isn't still modern about it is the temperature. 92 degrees, I think, was how hot it was then.
Yeah.
And that's probably more common now in Brooklyn than it was then.
Yeah, they were talking. I was listening to a podcast talking about this movie that where the average temperature, the high temperature then was 92, and now the high temperatures are 94, 95. So it's almost tracking global warming over 30 years.
Yeah, it's.
There's a headline that you see in the movie of a New York Times headline. It's something about the heat and you are crazy at the end. That was a real New York headline. That was a real New York Times headline because the heat. Something about the heat does make people a little bit wilder, a little bit crazier, a little bit more a little fried. And there's actual science to back up just how much the heat can affect you, especially when you're in a large group of people all in the same space, all miserably hot. When it does begin to cool off at the end of the day, that's when the violence comes out, because that's when people are starting to emerge from the oppression of the heat and into a more livable world. And that's what you see here is that's when the violence really starts to kick in, is when darkness begins to descend.
Right, and I can, when I'm watching this movie, I can hear, people having political arguments. And I don't want to call it political because it's not. Mm-hmm. But they're, when he goes home, he's on the clock working, but he goes home to take a shower. Yeah. I can hear someone going, well, that's stupid. This is what I'm talking about. He's lazy. And not just that scene, but every scene, you can hear people with their biased, got their blinders on opinions, having these conversations with one another, watching this movie even. I was at my son's baseball game, or my daughter's softball game, and I could hear these guys having a political discussion in their garage across the street. It was just ridiculous how we all think we know everything.
Oh, yeah.
But when I say with blinders on, I just pointed out, Spike Lee's character there when he does it. But whoever you are, you're going to have your bias, and you're going to focus on the characters that you want to prove your point with and what they do wrong. But every single character in this movie has flaws. Every single character in this movie has good things about them, except for maybe the cops, because they don't really dig into the cops as much.
Right.
But it's just a fascinating, somewhat frustrating, really frustrating when you do it from that angle, because I can't not think those things, picturing this is what this person in my life would say. This would be what that person in my life, and that I disagree with.
Right.
And I don't know, it's a fascinating, if nothing else, watch.
And it forces you into those mindsets too, and that's what's so amazing about it. Is Do the Right Thing is a movie that acts upon you in that way. The Danny Aiello character is one of the most fascinating and complex characters you can imagine, because you've got aspects of that liberal white guilt in there at times, and when he, especially like moments before things break down, he's referring to Mookie as being like a son to him, even though he's been kind of mocking him throughout the movie, and there's a lot of tension in their relationship at times. At the end, there he is, pouring his heart out and talking about how he's going to make the Sal and Sons Pizzeria, and Mookie, you're like a son to me, and then everything begins to break down after that moment, and immediately the switch flips. He goes from never being a guy who would say the N-word to he's saying it, and then he's acting upon Raheem, and then violence is erupting everywhere. And that is such a fascinating idea. Here you have this character who exemplifies this sort of liberal white guilt, white savior idea turning so quickly in this moment, and then it's fascinating. What amazingly brilliant, complex idea that is.
Yeah, and it's, we had a story here recently in the Quad City area where a restaurant owner was videotaped saying homophobic things after. It's very similar to this, where people were. No one came to him. It's a little different, but basically there was a gay pride parade outside his restaurant. The people doing the parade didn't do this, but the city put porta potties literally next to his outdoor eating area, which is kind of gross. And he was throwing a big fit trying to get them to move it. He's talking to the city and the cops, and literally, I think the cop just pulled out a camera and taped this guy. And after 20 minutes, finally lost it and said, just because they take it up the ass, they can do whatever they want. And that became a headline. He shouldn't have got there. Obviously, he messed up. But this movie does the same thing where they're coming in here to an Italian restaurant upset that there's pictures of Italian people. So they're not right.
Right.
But at the same time, the way he handles it's just a fascinating, when you see it in real time, it's frustrating, it's fascinating, it's horrible, it's everything is there, and I don't know, it's just, you can understand it, but at the same time it costs somebody their life, and he loses his pizza shop. And on one hand, you have people that watch this movie and probably would value the pizza shop higher than this guy's life. And that's sad. That's kind of what the point is here. Okay, two bad things happened over a completely pointless, stupid argument. And one guy died and one guy lost his pizza shop. They're not equal. This didn't need to get there.
Right.
And it did. And
that's another aspect too, is that it's a movie that challenges the way you see the world. Like you're holding a hard position, like I'm only going to put Italian people up on the wall, is dumb. But so is bugging out, getting so upset about something so silly, and him and them both just demanding that their position is the right position, leading to this ridiculously stupid and avoidable tragedy.
Right, and this whole movie, it just kind of captures moments like that. Obviously, that was the most intense, but it is a must-see. It holds up today. It'll hold up 30 years from now. Just a phenomenal movie. Mm-hmm. And I suppose I can say Batman's not my favorite movie of '89 anymore, because I had never seen this until...
That is pretty incredible.
Yeah. Barack and Michelle Obama's first date was to this movie.
I remember that from the movie they made about Barack and Michelle's first date.
Yeah. And Spike Lee said that if he could have seen Driving Miss Daisy, and if they did that, they wouldn't be together. Anything else on Do the Right Thing?
It's one of the all-time.
It's on
greats.
Hulu right now, free. Yeah. Go watch it if you have Hulu. If you haven't seen it, go see it. It really is that good. All right, that's our show. Next week, it's a fun week, huge week. Weekend at Bernie's turns 30.
Obviously, that's the headline.
Spider-Man from Far From Home comes out. Midsummer is the thing I'm most excited about.
I mean, no disrespect to Spider-Man. I'm a Spider-Man fan, but damn, I cannot wait to see Midsummer.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun episode. One of the ones that, every now and then you feel like you're phoning it in. Like you're leading into it like, I don't know what we're going to talk about this time. And it ends up being an okay episode, but this one is like, I don't know how we could screw this one up. Even the classic, The Virgin Spring, is a movie I've always been curious, and especially being a fan of The Last House on the Left, it's loosely based on that movie. So I'm excited about seeing that. Obviously, Weekend at Bernie's does turn 30. So does Shag, scenes from the class struggle in Beverly Hills, Haunted Summer, and Lethal Weapon 2, which I'm also excited about too. So it's going to be a jam-packed episode, and hopefully we have a third person with us to make it even longer. All right. Let's thank our Patreon supporters. I want to thank our Key Grip Level, Charlie Messing, and the Hall of Famer Jason Bryant. Our character actors, Josh and Beth Paul, Cousin Jeff, and Christina Cato.
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Our special effects level, Corey Finneran and Sarah Morrell.
May the Force be with you.
And our movie star, Dave Sievers.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
iHateCritics.net/Patreon is the best way to help support the podcast. There's also the PayPal link there, and then the merchandise link as well. Let's see. Beethoven or Bruce Almighty?
Bruce Almighty.
Okay, that's fine. Ben-Hur, 1959, or Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets?
Harry Potter. Good God, Harry Potter all the way. I cannot ever watch Ben-Hur again. Jesus
Simply for
Christ.
length reasons. I'll go.
It is so long.
Friday the 13th or Twins?
Twins.
Much as I like Twins, I'm going to go Friday the 13th just because of the memory of seeing it for the first time. All right, George, let's see what you say. Oh, wow, I won one.
Friday the 13th gets it. Okay.
Kill Bill Volume 2, American History X.
It's Kill Bill.
I agree. Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Rings, Godzilla 1998.
Oh, it's Lord of the Rings, unfortunately. That's a ballot Lord of the Rings can win for sure.
And I'd actually watch that one over Godzilla 2. Even though Godzilla is shorter, at least it wouldn't be as painful. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, A Beautiful Mind.
A Beautiful Mind.
I agree. That's a kind of a... do you like A Beautiful Mind? Are you a big fan of that, or is it kind of...
I was at the time, but I get I've never gone back to it.
Me either, and I wonder if I'd like it the same.
I'm curious about that as well. I might have to do that for my book that I'm working on.
Insomnia, Night of the Living Dead.
Ooh, wow. That is interesting. We're talking about the Pacino, Robin Williams
yes.
Insomnia. Yeah, I mean, Night of the Living Dead is so good, though. I'm going to go with Insomnia. I think it's a better made movie. But, the spirit behind Night of the Living Dead is so much more interesting.
Right. I'm going to go with Night of the Living Dead because of that spirit and because of everything that's come. I mean, some of it's bad, but it really did define zombies and the horror movie that dealt with what was going on in the country at the time. That was kind of one of the first. So let's see what George says. Insomnia it is. Which I like that movie too, so I'm not heartbroken or anything. Let's see. It's loading. Along Came Polly or Full Metal Jacket.
Full Metal Jacket.
Along Came Polly is a sequel. Enemy at the Gates, Ghostbusters 2.
Oh, man. I don't like either of those movies. I'll Ghostbusters 2, I guess.
Obviously, that's what I'm going with.
You heard the story this week, right?
What? Oh, yeah, Paul Rudd's in it.
Is going to be a Ghostbuster, apparently.
Yeah, part of me is dreading the political debate over all of it, just because I know the female one they're not making another one, or at least they're not yet. And
well, this will be an integrated team, apparently.
Oh, that's good.
So men and women.
Oh, good for them. They just haven't cast the woman yet.
I don't know. I have no other.
Yeah, they're very secretive about it.
The only thing I know about is Paul Rudd, but as I understand it, that's going to be the approach.
That's cool. The Social Network Gladiator.
Social Network all the way.
I think that's one of the best movies of our generation.
I really think people need to take another look at that movie and really kind of absorb it.
Right. I think a second viewing, once you know it's not just the Facebook movie.
Yeah.
The Shawshank Redemption, 500 Days of Summer.
500 Days of Summer.
Yeah.
When that we should probably try and make Social Network. Did we do it as a classic already, or
No?
we should do that when that Art of Self-Defense comes out.
That'd be great. That could be as soon as 2 weeks from now. Pay It Forward, Lara Croft, The Tomb Raider, The Cradle of Life.
It's Lara Croft. What was the other movie?
Pay It Forward.
Pay It Forward. Fuck that movie so hard. I hate it. I hate it so much. And I hated it before we canceled Kevin Spacey. That's how much I hated this movie.
That was a movie I wanted to like so bad because you had American Beauty and Sixth Sense and even Bon Jovi's in it. And
such a piece of trash. It is so garbage.
Right. It's just kind of a lame idea.
Cloying, manipulative, sloppy mess.
All based around an idea that everybody can get behind, which is even more conniving and stupid.
Manipulative and pushy and just trying to suck the tears out of your face.
Right. Big Trouble in Little China, Mary Poppins.
That's interesting. I guess I do like Mary Poppins a lot. But I will watch Big Trouble in Little China right now if you got it. So I'll take that one.
I'll take that one just because I know I should like it more than I do. I thought for sure we're going to have two guy movie losses where Shawshank loses and then Big Trouble loses. Falling Down or You Don't Mess with the Zohan.
Well, obviously we know where I'm going on this. But I think Falling Down is a fascinating movie, but it's not nearly as emblematic as people seem to think it is. I think if you look at it now, there's a lot of problematic aspects of Falling Down that we try to ignore to make it more iconic than it is.
Right. No, I agree. At the time, I was like, this is amazing. And then, I was also a kid, but I mean, I think even the baby boomers were like, this is amazing. And you're right. As you get away from it, you're like, well, of course cheeseburgers look like that when they don't look like the picture. I don't know why that stuck in there with everything else. A League of Their Own or Addams Family Values?
A League of Their Own.
I listened to a podcast recently. It was kind of a dual podcast where it was Jericho and Kevin Smith, where the first half was them watching the first half of Bad News Bears, and the second half they went to Smodcast and watched it. So they did it on two different podcasts. When we did our baseball episode, I don't remember really talking about Bad News Bears.
No, not much.
And at some point, that might have to come back and be a classic, maybe next baseball season or something. Because I'm curious. I haven't seen that in forever.
So they had a fascinating conversation about
it? They both call it top 10 movie in there for both of them. And obviously it was the same year Rocky came out, so it was just kind of a neat where they're basically trashing the next generation, which would be us. Well, they're Gen X. So maybe they were trashing the millennials where everybody gets a trophy. Well, back in the 70s, everybody lost, and there was... Because Bad News Bears just kind of ends after they lose. There's nothing after that.
I can't stand that complaint that, oh, now all the kids get a trophy.
Oh, I can't either.
It fucking pisses me off. That's such an old man yells at cloud argument once again. Where, you know what? Yeah, every kid gets a trophy. Why do you care? Why does it matter to you?
You know what's even worse about it is when I was a kid, we all got trophies.
Yeah.
So the baby boomers created this whole thing that they're bitching about now. And quite frankly, my son, he was in wrestling for like half a year, and he lost every tournament, got last place, and he still got a trophy, a giant big fourth place trophy, and he hated it because it reminded him of him losing. So it's not like they don't know what losing is.
It's so specifically to the parent how they teach a child about that.
Right.
It's not the child's fault that they're getting a trophy for this. It's how the parent raises them. And if a parent teaches their kid about losing and they understand the concept, then that's it. But it's very singular. To try and make this into emblematic of a generation is such an idiotic argument.
Right, especially when generation complaining about it created it.
Oh, absolutely.
Casino, The Sixth Sense.
The Sixth Sense.
I agree. Broken Circle Breakdown. Never heard of that.
I might have seen it, but I don't remember.
All right, let's see what this is. Say Anything or American Pie 2.
Say Anything.
Agreed. The Evil Dead, The Chronicles of Riddick.
The Evil Dead. Although I'd love Chronicles of Riddick.
Ghost, 12 Angry Men, 1957.
12 Angry Men.
I agree. I don't know why that just 12 guys sitting in a room fighting is so watchable to me. I don't know how they do it.
Incredibly compelling. And Henry Fonda, talk about movie stars. What a presence.
Flight Plan, 2005, Batman and Robin.
Oh, man. Because, like, Batman and Robin is funny to laugh at. Like, it is funny to watch and laugh and point at. Flight Plan is one of those incredibly dull, like, competent, bad movies. I think because Batman and Robin is more ambitious than Flight Plan, I gotta pick it.
I agree. There's something to, like we were talking about The Room or Best Friends, that there is I keep losing the word, like an authenticity to it. They really had poured their heart out, even though they missed completely. But you can kind of feel it. It's funny, but at the same time, it's compelling but then something like Midway.
It's the poignancy of the failure is so, you see somebody really giving their all and coming up short. It's so much more compelling than somebody who just fails from the very beginning. Like I find that to be much, much more interesting than like I said about the I was talking to you earlier about this review I wrote, which is on our Facebook page, about the Chris DeBarge story, as this TV1 biopic of one of the lesser-known DeBarge family members. And there's a poignancy and a sadness to the way that they fail in this movie, because everybody is just working their heart out to give their all, to really demonstrate how good they are, and they're failing so badly. You just kind of look at it and go, oh, like you just want to pat the movie on its head and tell them it's okay. You tried your best.
Here's a trophy.